So welcome again to the Mitigation Planning Coffee Break webinar series. I'd like to introduce your presenter, Brett Holt, Mitigation Planning Program Manager with FEMA Region 10. We also have on the line Amanda Syak with FEMA Region 10 answering your questions via the Q&A. Brett, take it away.
All right, thanks, Becca. I appreciate it. And everyone, welcome back to our second webinar for our Coffee Break series. For those who are joining us for the second time, thank you for coming back. For those who are new, welcome. We do, here in Region 10, we are having for 2017, we are having this series throughout the year, one a month. And at the end of the webinar, we'll show you what some of the upcoming trainings for the rest of the year. We did kick off last month with our introduction to mitigation planning, and this month we're going to look at building the mitigation planning team. What's it look like? Who should be on it? We did have Lisa Corbley was going to be joining us from Multnomah County. She had a personal matter happen just yesterday afternoon that she wasn't going to be able to join us. So I'm going to address her slides, but she's going to be addressing some of the work that they've done in Multnomah County in terms of the mitigation plan. So we'll be sure to address those properly. And I know I won't be able to do them as much justice as she can, but we'll also have her contact information if anybody wants to get in touch with Lisa there in Multnomah County down in Oregon. So with that, I'm going to team. You know, it's an interesting concept. You know, we have probably different ideas of what team is and what it looks like and who should be on it. You know, we sit there and, you know, we have a team that, as we think about solutions, it works. Maybe we're a little haphazard on what we do, but it's something that we're still able to bond together and make things happen. We have teams that maybe go out, you know, work long, hot summers. You know, they get a little dirty, but there's a lot of jobs that get done. There's multiple teams, of course, that you know are in this case is the hot shop crew that is you know, works the summers there, and a lot of them have the 20-person teams out there. You know, we have a team that for those of us in the 80s. Remember the A team, and maybe we have our different personalities, and you know, maybe we have our BA Baracus out there on our team going, you know, I pity the fool, you know, going and getting people to get things done. Maybe in your office you have someone going around saying, I pity the fool who doesn't get mitigation done, you know, trying to get some things going here, you know, Hannibal and Face, and you know, different personalities that make up our team. And maybe some of us look at ourselves as you know, a team of superheroes with our a little different of you know, powers that we bring to the table. The planner, the engineer, the wildfire expert, the floodplain manager, the elected officials. So different ideas of team, you know, to try to put a little bit of a fun touch to this. But team, you know, teams are supposed to be fun. We're supposed to have a good time with these teams. There's supposed to be a lot of trust that is developed through the teams that we're on. And I hope that's the most important thing you guys get from as you're doing this, because if you're on a team that there's not trust and you're not having fun, and in terms of just the interactions, that can make it really hard and challenging in the work we do here in mitigation. So I hope today, you know, we're going to try to get through a few things here on just what is for mitigation planning, what does this look like in the role of the team, and who should be on it. What's some of the process and the tasking that we should be doing. So hopefully you'll be able to, at the end of this webinar, describe the role of the team, identify the steps of the team in developing and updating the plan, identify preferred team members and those capabilities, explore various ways to engage the team members, and I'm going to, of course, go through some of our FEMA requirements as it relates to the planning team and process here. Before I start, though, I want to give a special thanks to the following jurisdictions. I contacted them a couple weeks ago. I contacted many jurisdictions, but these jurisdictions have the time and they provide the opportunity, some input, that some testimonials and examples that that are informing this particular slideshow. So, you know, we were able to get each of our 4 states. I wish we could have had a little bit more from Alaska and Idaho respond, but we didn't. But, you know, we did get a lot of opportunity, a lot of input here. So thank you to everyone. You'll see some of their testimonials. They help provide some examples also for our webinar. So I just want to bring it back. I know we revisited this last time, but what is mitigation? Because that's the role of that planning team. When you think of those capabilities that need to be on the team, you know, mitigation is that reduction or elimination of long-term risk to human life and property. And, you know, we had discussed the various ways, whether it was through, you know, just not developing in a particular area. We had talked about retrofits. We had talked about defensible space. But, you know, it's mitigation that's really happening steady state before that disaster, and not immediately at disaster. There's a lot of response that goes on. But then as we're starting to recover, there's a lot of mitigation that goes on there. I just want to bring that up again because that's that underlying theme of what we're doing with our webinar series, is that mitigation planning team. There's a lot of different teams at the local level that might be focused on response efforts, might be just looking at sustainability. There might be a team that just does public outreach or other, you know, that's just addressing, you know, other different issues in the community. And the work that we're talking about, especially when we think about capabilities and who the team members that should be here, is how does it help inform the work of mitigation. So the role of the planning team, what are we doing here? What are we trying to accomplish? Hopefully this role, you guys are looking at this, this is one thing I should say through all the slides here. There's some things that might be familiar with you and the work you're doing, and there might be some insight that go, oh, I didn't think about that. Hopefully we'll be able to offer that insight, some examples, best practices that you might not have thought of before. I think every team out there has room to grow in terms of process or team members. So I just want to give that quick plug out for this particular webinar. So the team provide insight into the community. You know, get those team members, you know, do you have someone that understands the history and what's going on, people that can speak to the different populations, really understanding what makes this community tick. They engage the community members. They serve as the connectors to other stakeholders. You know, really key to have those people on your team that really are connected to other networks, not just multi-jurisdictions, but some of the team members that have, you know, can speak to or be able to go and reach out to various community groups, maybe elected officials or whoever it might be. So thinking about team members, the teams be able to serve as connector. They identify the vulnerabilities of each jurisdiction. They develop potential solutions for jurisdictions, and they're champions for community resilience and hazard mitigation. Such a key part here is that they're the ones that will be holding that mitigation flag up and saying, let's do this. This is important for us to do. So we did see this in our, you know, when we talked about mitigation, and last month we were looking at this slide of what can mitigation inform with all of our planning and actions. But in this whole sphere of mitigation, the key part here, that foundation, is this team. It's you guys here. If you guys have been on a mitigation planning team before or you're currently on one, without you guys, this doesn't happen. And it's really important that we recognize that we on the team, you guys on the team, are that foundation for success to go and educate and to help, again, we said, communicate it, understand the risks, to help build the relationships. So FEMA, we have requirements for the planning team, and I just want to address this because whereas we have the requirements, I want to recognize that, or I want you to recognize that there's a lot of room in how these requirements are met. And so the local mitigation plan review guide is where you can find this. It is in Code of Federal Regulations, but I'm going to pull the text from our local plan review guide here. And This is also in our tribal multi-hazard mitigation planning guidance. It has a little bit of different text, but it's getting to the same thing, that you, in the planning process, you have to include how it was prepared and who was involved in the process for each jurisdiction. So it's saying document the plan, how the plan was prepared, must include the schedule and the time frame that made up the plan's development, as well as who was involved. The plan must list the jurisdictions, and so this is just a piece in our guidance is saying, all right, who was there and what did you guys do? Not saying how we're not listing every step you have to do. We're not saying exactly who has to be on the team, but this is where I would like to show or go through our webinar, and you guys are looking, of course, at what teams you have to say, well, who should be there? We know we have to have somebody, but who should we have at this table? And what's it look like when it's multi-jurisdictional? That might be a bit more complex, but we can explore some ways. In our requirements too, then documenting this process just means that. You have sign-in sheets, agendas, meeting minutes. Do you have describe the process, who was there? All of that is genuine. We find that it's all in the plans. You guys express it in different ways when you are documenting it. So we do have a lot of room here, but this is where it comes from with the planning team requirements. So I asked the question, those jurisdictions who were able to help out, what makes a good planning team? And I got a few testimonials here from some jurisdictions. Kitsap County, just across the Puget Sound here, says that attendance and they're active such that they can bring it back to their leaders and push a continued resiliency program. City of Renton, just over here in the King County area, individuals are interested in participating, not mandated, and have the authority to invest their own time and make project prioritization decisions on behalf of their organization or department. City of Portland was talking about a diversity of experience and interest, including both technical knowledge and community interest concerns, share commitment to taking the time needed to do the work. So different outlooks on what makes a good planning team, from our local jurisdictions here. So what's this first step that we take when we get the team together, or even if it's your first time doing this, or now you're bringing back a team, or you have an existing team, of course, is leadership. Who's going to help do this and facilitate this and help really get this group going? There's various ways that this can happen, of course. A lot of times people say it falls to the emergency manager, and that is the case in many, many jurisdictions. But it's also saying, is this something that comes from a commissioner? Is this something that will come from a tribal council member? Is it come from our natural resources department? Who is there and who's that leader? Sometimes they're volunteers, sometimes it's mandated, but of course it's the key part of a successful team is who's going to be help leading it. And I think a lot of time that leadership doesn't mean it's the smartest person in the room, but it's definitely that person that can help guide and foster and really encourage that conversation and facilitate this conversation and move that team forward. That's where a really good leader comes from. Then we are looking at our team members. Who needs to be on this? And what some of the expertise we should be thinking about is those who understand people and social conditions, built in natural environments, understand our hazards and disaster history. They who promote hazard mitigation, understand regulating development, the private sector dynamics. A lot of different expertise to think about on this planning team. Down in Oregon, Marion County was talking about how we recruited widely, working with both public and private stakeholders for participation for their team. Where we start to look for those members, of course, is who was on the previous planning team. So those planning teams that may not be, especially when you're coming in and you're updating your plan, if you didn't stick together the last few years, look back. Well, who was on it before, especially if you've had staff changeover? Think about those roles. Look at committees that oversee land use planning, local emergency planning committees. Always starts there. Also, look for the volunteers, the ones who are saying, put me in, coach, pick me, pick me. They have energy. They want to be there. that's great, as opposed to those who are just like, oh man, I got to go do this. This is just another tasking for me. Be deliberate, especially if you have that opportunity to look and hand select team members. So key with being able to have a really successful team. And if you're the leader on that team, being able to go in and know, well, what would make that good team and who should be here. If you can come in, and sometimes you might have to talk to a supervisor to get that particular staff on there, or to go to a particular NGO and have to sell this, or organization, whatever it might be. Start small and build up. Sometimes you're not sure if we have everybody, so just start with a core group and build up over time when you're thinking about the planning team members. So who are these team members that we should be thinking about? And I'm going to go through a series of them. You guys will be thinking, of course, think internally, well, who do we have on the team? Does that make sense for us? And there's something I want to think about, too, for your multi-jurisdictional plans, is that you are, this isn't to say that the county's bringing everything to the table if you're doing a multi-county, or if it's a county, city, tribe. Each jurisdiction should really be thinking, okay, I know I have a representative that might be part of this larger committee, but on our subcommittees, our committees in our cities, who should be there? It's never one person that's running the show. You should really have a group of people with varied capabilities. So think about that with team members here. So local community planners are definitely a key part to incorporating on the team, they understand past, current, future community development trends, policies, and activities that affect development. Of course, also to understand the relationship between hazards and development, public works, engineering staff. We're looking at the infrastructure that can be addressed through capital improvements. Emergency managers, our first responders to disasters, information on past occurrences. They understand a lot of the hazards and the risk information that's there. Also, they're that direct line up with state emergency management and then up into FEMA. They have a lot of understanding, too, of our grants that are coming out and just the programs that are coming through emergency management that don't just affect the emergency managers but affect all aspects of our community. So elected executive officials, tribal council members, really, a key part for getting that support for moving projects forward. It can really help in explaining and communicating the plan and support these other varied initiatives. I think it's a real key part here to have our key member. Floodplain administrator really understands your community's flood hazard maps, ordinances, repetitive loss properties, and actions to continue compliance with the National Flood Insurance Program. A fire chief or a wildfire mitigation specialist. And you think about what hazards are affecting you, and we bring up a floodplain administrator and wildfire are examples of individuals, but you might have if there's a geologist or some other scientist, that someone can help speak to some of the landslides or the seismic hazards that are in the area. But so for fire, they have information on wildfire history, WUI or wildland urban interface ordinances. They might understand the fire adapted communities or FireWise programs. Of course, an understanding of wildfire behavior and risk. And there's more team members. There's so much opportunity out there, and this is where you guys really taking that look at yourselves to say, well, do we have this on our team? And there's something here I'll talk about in a minute of going, well, there's team, and then there's people you might say, okay, well, we don't need them at every meeting, they're not core members, but maybe there's people that we just engage, at a couple workshops, and that's something you guys will have to make a decision about. Do we need a GIS specialist that's on the team, or do we bring them in at certain points? Our state and federal partners, perhaps they aren't a specific team member. They could be, depending on where you're at, but they also might be a stakeholder that you're engaged. Gauge some point in the process to either get some validation, to get some information, things like that. So GIS, state and federal partners, social service agencies. We talked about somebody who understands those, the populations. So looking at low-income special needs populations, thinking about our access and functional needs. our community members so key here. Having that just the citizen, the community member on there. Sometimes you might be a voice of reason. Sometimes you know, it could be 1 or 3, 4 of them, depending on how it is there. But having someone that is a non-governmental entity or associated with any organization, they're just there as an interested community member. Housing authorities, public information officers, environmental protection, public health, parks and rec, business leaders. We talked about businesses and the private sector. Are they on your team? Because we understand a really key part, of course, is when we have any type of a disaster, those impacts to our businesses and hopefully getting them back up and going. But if they don't understand the risk, how can they start mitigating the risk to the degree possible? I understand a lot of it has to do with transportation and other utilities and infrastructure that affects them. But engaging the business community, especially small business owners, to understand the risk, but then also businesses to help on some public and private partnerships that might help in implementation of your project. So really key part. So we have, if you aren't familiar with, but we have a local mitigation planning handbook that we have a series of worksheets in the back that we use. They're available for you to help guide you in thinking about this. And this is in the worksheet 2.1, it's the mitigation planning team worksheet that has a whole list of these different stakeholders or team members that you might want to think about. And this would be great. You know, we'll have Word versions of this available to you guys on our site afterwards. Taking this and just kind of going through, understanding, well, this is someone that's on the team, is this someone that's a stakeholder that we'll gauge. They're not there at every meeting, but we encourage you to use this. As you can see, it's a 2-page, and you guys can tailor this to your needs. But hopefully give you a really good start of who you guys should be thinking about on these teams. A couple considerations. If you are a CRS community and you're building a planning team, there's some things you guys might want to think about specifically of who needs to be there, as well as some of your process. And I'm not a CRS expert here, but I want you guys to be cognizant of this, that if you are, there's no reason to have a separate process or separate teams. Develop your teams in a way that can help you get your CRS points, as well as still, as you're doing your mitigation plan update. So right now, the latest version of the CRS manual is in review and hopefully will be released later this year. So right now, this is the 2013, so this might look just a little bit different here in the next few months. But think about this if you're a CRS community, community rating system. For those who don't know, CRS is part of the National Flood Insurance Program, and communities who participate can get some reductions in their insurance premiums. Also, if you are a community who is integrating both your natural hazard mitigation plan and the community wildfire protection plan, there's some additional team members you might think about in terms of community wildfire protection plans. Specific property owners, public land management agencies, forest industry groups, contractors, the insurance, environmental groups. So think about this on your team. Sometimes this might be a subgroup. Maybe you have a specific, maybe you have a core planning team, but you have a subgroup that might focus on flood or a subgroup that might focus on wildfire. That's maybe where this could be, but thinking about this ahead of time and going, what's the purpose of this plan, and more specifically the planning process, and who should be here. So keep this in mind as you are thinking of team members. And another consideration, and I've mentioned this, are multi-jurisdictional planning teams. A couple of different scenarios to look at here. One, as you're doing a multi-jurisdictional team, there may be jurisdiction A, we'll say, maybe has one representative on a planning team. Jurisdiction B, maybe they have a few that are part of the all on the planning team. So they're on the core team. But the key part behind this is that those reps, they don't work alone. They have a sub-team. They go back to their communities or their cities and say, hey, all right, last week or 2 weeks ago, this is, I was at the planning team meeting. We were talking about our community assets. And so I'm going to have to come back to you guys and go, all right, so what's important to us in this community in terms of our buildings and infrastructure? that one representative doesn't do it alone. They are communicating, they're working, because it doesn't affect just the plan update. It affects the implementation too, that they need to use this planning process to get the buy-in. So when you're also going to be submitting your plan, challenge with multi-jurisdictional one person, you still have teams, we're still going back. So please keep that in mind. More and more plans seem to be becoming multi-jurisdictional, and we want to make sure that these beyond the county, these cities are still getting are still being fully invested in mitigation planning and getting projects out the door. And just looking here in Washington County, they mentioned how their plan includes 3 jurisdictions, but each one of those jurisdictions has a steering committee and to help address their implementation of groups. A couple examples: Ada County, they had a small core, what they called planning team, when this was their plan update, which is working through the county and some of at that time they had contractors. But the important part is they had what they called a planning partnership. And that was the representatives from each of these communities coming in who did reach back within their communities. But you can see a mayor and GIS manager, engineers, fire chiefs, board chairs, just a variety of different experience and knowledge on this partnership over in Ada County, Idaho. Another one was the Quileute Indian Nation. You can just see how they have their team members, but the different representations that from different groups that were on this team. So this was a single jurisdiction just for the tribe. So I'm going to go here. I'm going to open a poll up and just kind of start gauging what does your mitigation planning team do. Actually, no, let me check here for a minute. There we go. So just take a look at some of these options of your mitigation planning team, and what do you guys, just kind of to gauge what you guys do out there, and for your teams, maybe there's some things that you're like, wow, that might be a good idea, or yeah, we kind of do that, but just trying to get an idea of. I'll give you guys here a few seconds to do this. All right, just maybe another few, maybe about 5 more seconds here. I'll close the poll. And all right, I'm going to go ahead and close that. And, a lot of you are, as I just kind of look at the results here, setting up a project schedule. We had about roughly half that were doing that. Charter is not, or a memorandum agreement, not a popular one. Looking at deliberately select some or all team members. Deliberation is about a third of you. Food and beverages for team meetings. Okay, it's not a popular one at all. Actively engaging elected officials, about a third. Obtaining official team recognition, again, not a real popular one here. So, guys, again, it's one that it varies by obviously your entities and your experience. But we're going to go ahead and I'm going to go through some of that, because a lot of that is important to think about when we think about buy-in, and we're thinking about how to keep our participants engaged. So, I asked our entities earlier about how do they encourage participation, and Ada County mentioned the annual progress report keeps the planning partnership engaged. Successes keep them interested. Really big thing here, to those successes, maybe even capitalizing and sharing those successes. But we do have challenges. I won't point out the particular entity jurisdiction, but we did have one mentioned. We've struggled with engagement with our team. The group involvement waned following the initial development of the plan with a consultant. We don't have a community charter agreement per se. So it's not easy. There's nothing, I don't think this is easy work at all. But definitely, we also had the Confederate Tribes of the Umatilla Indian Reservation in Oregon, saying a meeting facilitator involvement of members in a productive format that makes good use of their time and invites ownership in the plan. I think that is a key part. We need to respect our members' times. And if you guys aren't invested in this in owning the plan, it's not going to make this a very livable document when we try to implement it. So what are some of the things we have that can help encourage participation? Food, I mean food. No, it's not the only thing, but it's always fun to have. Portland, though, I like how they mentioned there. To get diverse community participation, we agreed to meet 4:30 to 7 in the evenings. Not feeding people in this time frame was a killer. People get hungry. But also food creates a social space that's important for the sense of team and friendly back and forth that we wanted to promote. So a couple of things on participation here. Send formal invitations from elected official or department heads when you're trying to engage people on your team, if you're trying to be deliberate. I think that brings it shows the importance of what the work's trying to do, that we're trying to get done. Following up with a phone call. So you're starting to connect with the team members and say, hey, it's important, come on, be part of this, making sure that we have the one-on-one. Plan meetings in multiple convenient locations. If you're a multi-jurisdictional plan, are you guys always meeting in the same spot? Think about if you're a large county. Does it make sense to always have the same spot? Maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. But you might think about moving around those meetings to help meet where other people are located in your town or in your county. You also might think about if you don't have the webinar options or the call-in options for these multi-jurisdictional. And refreshments, as we mentioned. So there's a few steps I wanted to go through about some of your initial planning team discussions. Establish responsibilities, confirm your plan, purpose, and mission, developing a project plan, reviewing the current mitigation plan, and developing a communications plan. So let's take a look at responsibilities. And again, as I'm going through this, I want you guys to be asking yourselves, do we do this as a team when we're together, either during the plan update or even now? Because I really hope your teams are meeting right now. But I'm smiling because I know there's challenges with how this works. Some of you guys have already echoed how well you guys are working, and others have said, ooh, that's a tough one. But in responsibilities, first of all, just thinking about, are we providing facility? Where are we going to meet at? I just mentioned the multi-jurisdictional and different approaches for locations. Responsibility that the team members are attending the meetings. They need to be able to, who's making decisions on plan process and content. Responsibilities that we, collecting the data. They need to be responsible in submitting these action worksheets. And this is all part of this planning process. They have to be able to review the drafts and make those comments, give you the input. Even if there's a contractor that's helping you update this, it's still ultimately it's up to the community and the planning team to be able to really be engaged here. And of course, the responsibility is coordinate and assist with public involvement and plan adoptions. We'll talk about public involvement next month, but it's such a key one here. So I've got some examples from, this one's from Spokane County, Washington, over in Eastern Washington there. And they set up a ground rules for their steering committee. And it was 6 pages. I just got a couple here, but just kind of laying out a little bit, well, who's the committee? What are the rules for us in terms of our interactions, attendance and whatnot, spokesperson, staffing, the public comment. But it kind of just put on paper what, lays out real clear what we're supposed to be doing as a committee. Over in Portland, they had ground rules attachment for meeting facilitation, identifying the chairs, even the seating, some of the seating arrangements, though. And what I really like, though, is the U-shaped conference, because that is important to have really good engagement around the table. I think a lot of you guys, I'm sure as a team, you're not usually just doing rows. You guys are actually looking and engaging each other. but they had a series of, or a multi-page handout on just some of the ground rules for the committee. To be honest, I have yet to see a charter of any sort, or a specific memorandum of agreement signed by various agencies. If you guys have any examples out there, feel free to email me. I'd love to incorporate some of this. I know internally in FEMA, when I've been on a couple committees, I've set up committee charters that really help out. It's not just for me, but it's also for my supervisors and our team member supervisors to understand my involvement and my commitment on a particular committee. And that might really help in some of the engagement and the accountability for your teams. So the second thing we talked about then is, after we're establishing responsibilities, looking at establishing a plan, purpose, and the mission. What are we doing? And this is an example mission statement here of, protect life, it is a legit one, but this example from Lincoln County: protect life, property, economy, quality of life, and environment of Lincoln County from hazards and disasters. It's a short, simple statement. It's an intended outcome, and it's creating a common purpose. It's very high level. It's lofty, but it helps to help drive that process of where you're going with not just the plan, but with your committee, what you're trying to do, and provide that foundation. Obviously, a lot of plans have this as their goal. They set up the goal. Sometimes it's multiple goals that you guys are setting up, but that really, those goals, as you guys are looking at the committee, are you guys really relating to those goals as you are doing either the plan update or the implementation or plan development? So the third thing is a project plan. We noticed only maybe a few of you guys, a third of the participants today were doing project plans. These are so important, basic project management kind of skills here. How do you set your pace? It helps to set your pace, especially if it's a multi-year, or it doesn't matter what the time frame, whether it's a couple months or multi-year. It kind of shows you where should we be, what are the outcomes, what are we trying to accomplish. If you have a FEMA planning grant scope of work, some of this might have been identified in there, might have been pretty high level. You probably want to break it down to a little few more subtasks. But it also puts all the team members on the same page in the understanding. So I'm going to show you an example that was coming from Washington County, Oregon. This is just like the half of what they had. But you can see these tasks on the left side, and this might have been either in Excel or in Microsoft Project, but heck, handwriting, I don't care what it looks like. But I think I don't need to see this, but sometimes we see some of these in a plan in an appendix. But the the part here is showing what are those tasks and subtasks. You look at the months, and they start highlighting where should we be and what tasks are overlapping when. And this goes out a lot farther. It's just not a 2.5 month process that they did. But there's a game plan here of what to get done. Our fourth step was reviewing the current mitigation plan, of course. Look back at what, when your committee's getting together, or, you're updating it. So if you're updating the plan, of course, as a first-time plan, you have nothing to look back on. But if you are updating your plans, you're going, okay, what are some ideas for improvement from the last time? What areas might require a little bit more time? Maybe you thought, oh, you know what, we spent a lot of time on that risk assessment, but then we kind of just zipped through some strategies and didn't really think about them and really tie them back to our risk assessment. Maybe you want to focus more this time around on that. Think about your impacts to your schedule. So what I want to suggest, though, I have 2 examples on here. If you've had a plan reviewed from us, you've received our review tool. And it shouldn't have just been one person. Hopefully, whoever got an email to receive a hard copy, distribute it to everybody. All the team members have seen this, all the county that was participating. Because it's not just the review. There's, in our section 2 is a plan assessment, and we try to highlight strengths and opportunities for improvement. I think that's a really good part to zero in on and go, this isn't just about meeting requirements, but maybe there's some things that we can do that really just makes a really good plan or better planning process for us. The tribes still currently have what are called the crosswalk. Some of you local jurisdictions, if you might have an old crosswalk too, and we try to highlight in there, I've made it in the yellow mark, recommended revisions. And this is the part that's kind of, yep, you've met the requirements, but you know what? Here's some recommendations of maybe the next time. go out above and beyond. So as your planning team, look through these and see if they're if they are they're relevant for your current process. So, all right. And the fifth step, or there's more, but another fifth one thing about is your comms plan or outreach strategy, which we'll talk about next month. So I'm not going to really dive into this. Okay, so this is the part where Lisa Corbally, if some of you in Oregon may know her, she used to work, she's not able to join us. She did provide her slides, but she worked for the state of Oregon Department of Land Conservation and Development, DLCD, for a little while, and then she, a year ago or so, a little less, she joined Multnomah County and their Office of Emergency Management as a planner. And Multnomah County has just submitted up to us, went to the state, now it's up for us for plan review, but they went through a pretty extensive process. They not only were updating the county plan, they were bringing in 4 jurisdictions that used to have individual single jurisdiction plans, and they were bringing them in as part of a multi-jurisdictional plan. The city of Portland is in Multnomah County, but Portland has its own standalone plan. But as a result, the communities, the county planning effort and the Portland, they still had team members participating. At least they understand they might not have been an active decision making, but they were there to listen on these updates. So I know I can't do Lisa justice on everything, but I want to go through some of a few of her slides that she brought forth. This effort, of course, started back in 2014. She herself took it over about a year ago here. Multnomah County is the smallest county in Oregon, but has the largest population. And so they have 6 incorporated cities. Portland and Gresham are the 1st and 4th largest cities in Oregon, respectively. But there's a lot of unincorporated here. The key part with this area is there's a lot of, because of all the communities, there's a lot of different different objectives. There's a lot of diversity in geography, populations, and hazards. You've got about 30,000 people that live in small cities, roughly 28,000 people live in unincorporated communities, rural, dense forests. The plan, of course, includes the county enterprise, all the facilities and properties, and the plan considers all the people who live and work and play in this area. You think of a lot of people that are traveling maybe from just right across the border in Washington and Vancouver that come in, and people who are experiencing homelessness too. So there's a lot of, so when you think about this is what the plan is going to tackle, you think about your planning team. So that means you have to have different expertise that are going to be on this team to help not just recognize what are some of the current issues, but then recognizing what should we be doing about it. So they were able to, their committee meeting, they had 6 meetings. They had a rep from each jurisdiction participating, as well as Portland and a special district. So in their 6 meetings, of course, in addition to that, they would have a strategy workshop, as well as the local hazard vulnerability identification analysis, or something people might say HIVA or HIRA or HVA workshop. Interesting thing about the strategy workshop, though, it wasn't just, that's one of those ones where, so at your steering committee meetings, it was a very core group of people. But when you came up for the strategy workshop, it expanded. They had about 18 attend that. So it was much more than the steering committee. You also had community organizations, private institutions, regional partners that were brought in on this. And that's a great approach to doing that, because it means that was a great way to engage people that don't traditionally have to be there all the time, but they are important to obviously the overall success of the plan. And the thing, too, about when you're developing strategies is you don't want to start identifying people who are never even know that they're the lead, and which I'll just say, and you guys might be nodding your head, yes, that happens, where you're saying, oh, the school district will do this, or you know what, this is that organization. Well, and they've never been at the table. So this strategy workshop was a great way to engage a broader audience. And then for their local hazard identification analysis workshop, they had a much smaller, just for the cities that were there. Lisa wanted to point out here, though, that in between these meetings, her role as this coordinator was she was helping to do one-on-one meetings with these the 4 individual jurisdictions. She's helping to get the consensus ahead of time in terms of what are some of the ongoing issues, what are some of the successes. Let's do some of the analysis, so that when the team would come together for this multi-jurisdictional effort, some of the consensus was being built, and it made it much more productive. Team meetings, discussions were more informative, and so it's a really big part. She was that champion, really bringing that to table to helping move this forward. But she thinks it was just so critical to have these one-on-one meetings that were there. Oh, sorry, I was ahead of her one. So these are the one-on-one meetings she's talking about. The most valuable in meetings, you got to go there if you can. I realize multi-jurisdictional is tough, so going in, getting that buy-in ahead of time. She talks about a couple tools that, to be honest, in the end weren't that great. The Google Docs was really tough at times, not because it's just with some of the login issues. Microsoft Word is what they ended up doing with track changes and just having some of the revisions and things sent. So they had an effort. Again, it was a multi-year effort that occurred, and again, their plan is just now up for review at this point with FEMA. Lisa's information's here. Again, I know I couldn't do her justice on this, but or do the plan any justice on this. I know they did a lot of work for Multnomah County. All right, so this is the last part here for our presentation, is kind of going, how do we look forward now that the plan's done? I'm going to open this poll here to go, what are you guys doing? Are you guys meeting? Now that the plan's done, how does your team come together? And so I'll just leave this open for a little bit to say, just gauge how often you guys are meeting. See it for a few, about 10 seconds.
While that's going, we had a question, or maybe you can talk a little bit more about the mitigation action plan from the City of Portland.
Oh, you know what? So that's just how they titled it. That's their natural hazard mitigation plan. They just put a title was called their, was just titled the mitigation action plan, which is basically them going, this is our implement, it's really putting more, keywords to it to say this is us moving forward, this is us doing stuff. So it was their natural hazard mitigation plan.
I see. Thank
you. Yeah, thank you. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and close the poll up here, and let me just take a look at what we had for some of the results. Right now, quarterly it seems to be a big one for many of you for meeting. But it's kind of across the board, though, on whether it's monthly, biannually, and then we're talking 5 or 6. But there was a few of you, very few, that said never, we never meet. And then a few of you said this wasn't applicable. But right now, the predominantly looks like maybe about 10% of you are meeting quarterly seems to work best. So that's a key part here. We do have some planning requirements around maintenance of your plan, the implementation. And the key part I just want to be able to point out on this is that you have to identify in your plan, how, when, and by whom it will be monitored. Of course, evaluation, same thing, how, when, and by whom it will be, who evaluate it. And a lot of you guys describe this, and I just want to, it's really going to be important that this gets you guys are doing it. And so, again, planning guide, it's in CFR, it's also in our local plan review guide. So let me go and just had a couple. Fremont County, Idaho talks about that they do this through their local emergency planning committee activities. City of Albany talks about the steering committee remains the same from year to year. Oops, I'm sorry, I had a typo. But our working committee will not get back together again after the plan has been updated. So they have like a steering committee, but a broader working committee for the plan that only comes together for the update. And the Kenai Peninsula Borough just talks about maintaining contact with other agencies and communities that have a stake in the process. helps, help new city management and others understand why their team is vital to the entire area and keeping the cycle in place and documentation current. Just talking about, when they're implementing, they really are engaging if new members and new community officials, hey, we got to stick together through this the 5-year cycle. We don't want that to lose that momentum. So a couple ideas on implementation recommendations. Identify that person who's, and it doesn't always fall on one individual per se. There might be one convening, but if you're multi-jurisdictional, each jurisdiction is going to be responsible for this. To think about who it is, and I threw in there, is this now the action team? These are people now doing something. Maybe you guys call yourself something different, but set your timeline and hold each other accountable. We were just talking about how often are you meeting, monthly, quarterly, biannually, annually? Do you meet post-disaster? Kind of come back and review what's new, what's changing. As I said, each jurisdiction is responsible for implementation. We're all got to be there, Doug. And it's not just saying, well, that was up to the county. They're going to kind of take care of it. No, we're all out there. And because we're all kind of part of that process and in this planning effort. Make sure you're out there doing this too, everybody in there. That was part of this plan. Look back at the previous 5 years too. If you're updating your plan, look back 5 years. What worked and what didn't work for the maintenance of your plan and the implementation. Adjust as needed. Try to integrate these principles into your daily job routines. When I think about some of the current planning and the permitting, if we're not looking at where folks are getting permits, if we aren't having maps already just part of there saying where's the hazards located, and the developers aren't understanding it, how do we incorporate that maybe into the day jobs of what we're doing or what they're doing? Of course, encourage our local champions, as we mentioned, and develop strong messaging. We got to sell this. For those of you who might have taken a G318 class, our local mitigation planning class, we've mentioned how it's important to, at the end of the class, we like to sell this, and it's very important to have a message to sell. And we have a worksheet in our handbook to help you guys out on some of the progress report forms. So feel free to go in there and use that. It helps to identify the projects, gives you guys some, is this being accomplished? What are some of the obstacles? So I just want to just close here with a few thoughts from our communities that gave me some testimonials. Albany's just talking about how they've been lucky to have city managers and department heads in the development of the plan and the 2 updates. Without the support, we would have not gotten this completed. We would have gotten it completed, but it would not have been at the level it's been. King County makes sure that, they have good structure, but make sure you clearly delineate roles and work plans. Marion County, good planning takes time. I think the biggest threat to success is that people see the plan as a check-the-box effort. Pierce County just talks about that, diversity of the group and representation from various departments so key. In Fremont County, work hard on getting people from the community that are not affiliated in any way with the represented agencies. Individual citizens help a lot. All right, got some resources. We've mentioned that. We'll give those to you guys, but please feel free to go ahead and, there's a lot of this all in the FEMA library. We have our website. We have some trainings coming up. They're all on this. If you guys have been seeing, if you come to and this will be when we email out, you get the URL. We have Lewiston, Idaho. We have a G318 mitigation planning workshop coming up. All the sign up is all on this website. You guys come in and find out where to click. Columbia Gorge area, we don't have the date or the location announced quite yet. We're going to be doing that very shortly, but June 22nd, 23rd. And here in our Lidwin office, annually we hold a G318 training October's. So in October, this will be the 24th to the 25th. So hopefully you've been able to understand what's the role of the team, identified steps to take and update your plan, identify preferred team member capabilities, explore ways to engage your team members, and identify the FEMA requirements. Here's our upcoming training. Lots of it, we're on February right now, so a lot of different topics. Next month, we're going to be looking at public engagement. And but please join us as you guys can for our different options. We try to announce these at least 2 months in advance. And let me get this last poll as we're doing it. I'm going to open up a poll because we want to know how well we're doing here. and I'd love to just get your feedback on that. So next month we're going to be talking about effective public engagement and mitigation planning, looking at an outreach strategy. Do you have one? What stakeholders do you engage throughout the planning process? Do you engage both internal and external audiences? What techniques may work best for your community? So such a key part here for this. And this is it. If you guys have contacts, we've got our state mitigation planners. Derek Hebert, who is our new state mitigation strategist with Washington, just came on board a couple weeks ago. So we are, all of our states now have our planners. So we welcome you guys either to contact us or contact your representative. Now I know you have folks outside of Region 10. You guys would have a state hazard mitigation officer that you can contact also, or a state planner. Ours here in our region though. So I'm not seeing any questions. So with that, really do appreciate you guys calling in and taking time to be part of this. We appreciate any feedback. You can, obviously filling out the poll or emailing us individually. I'm always open to examples and best practices that you guys are seeing out there as we can. We don't just want to incorporate them on this webinar series, but we incorporate them in our training. We share them with other, as applicable, we can share them with other communities, because I think it's best that communities are learning from communities and not just hearing it from, the FEMA's just talking down or things like that. I'm really hoping we can exchange those ideas between that and facilitate that exchange of ideas between our communities.